100 years ago, a group of British, Australian and Canadian tunnellers were constructing a dugout directly beneath the ruins of Zonnebeck Parish Church. These underground shelters that connected with the trench systems were the only protection against the constant shell fire on the front line. Digging them out was a grim job. As they toiled in the dim light, liquid mud sloshing around their boots, the tunnellers would have heard the muffled boom of shells exploding overhead. Their Allied comrades were fighting to fend off advancing German forces in the final stages of the Battle of Passchendaele, one of the bloodiest of the First World War. It was particularly intense here. The village of Zonnebeck, northeast of Ypres, in Belgium, sat at the center of the Ypres salient, a front-line bulge that fluctuated by just a few miles for the duration of the conflict. The tunnellers never finished digging. The Battle of Passchendaele lost its momentum and the Allies were forced to retreat for fear of being surrounded. When the war was won 9 months later, the battlefields were cleared and entrances to these underground constructions closed up. For 71 years, the Zonnebeck Church dugout lay forgotten. Then, in 1989, it was rediscovered by a team of archaeologists trying to locate the 12th-century crypt of an Augustinian abbey that once stood on this site. Now, with careful drainage, research and a 3D inventory complete, the dugout will be open to the public on August 1st, the centenary of the first full day of the battle. It will give visitors this year a one-off opportunity to experience the cold realities of life underground during the course of a battle that ran from the end of July until November 10th, with the chance to pace the original muddied duckboards, see the unfinished machine gun posts, and survey the rooms, including one with bunk beds. Local historians who have been given an advance viewing were deeply moved by the experience. A system of tunnels at Passchendaele will open to the public for the first time next month. Credit Getty. It has been very emotional, relates Bart de Groot, who has worked as a volunteer guide at the Memorial Museum Passchendaele 1917 for the past decade. We discuss the war every day, but for the first time, we could experience the heavy darkness of the tunnels, the smell and the dampness. You can imagine the physical and emotional stress it put the men under. Down there, they were safe from shells and bullets, but the noxious gases could sink down, so they had to wear masks even underground. The past is disconcertant. You feel so close to them. At the height of the war, more soldiers were surviving underground in the Ypres area than the 35,000 people living in the city today. The structure lies about 16 feet underground and consists of a main gallery nearly 95 feet in length with side corridors and 5 rooms where soldiers would have eaten and rested between attacks. Because the dugout was never properly used, they didn't find as many artifacts in the late 80s as they did around the trenches, but there are buttons from uniforms, a hammer, the remains of a shovel, and rubber waders now on show in the museum, explains de Groot. All that's been done is the draining of the water. The trenches and First World War sites visitors can see today are good, but most are reconstructions. This is the real thing. And once it shuts on November 10th, that's it. It'll be closed forever, and allowed to reflood with water, says de Groot, a little sadly, as we stand looking at the scale model of the tunnel housed inside the Memorial Museum Passchendaele 1917. It may be our last chance to see an original relic of the Great War. The Battle of Passchendaele lasted 100 days and claiming 500,000 casualties for the sake of a 5-mile advance. Credit Getty. At the height of the war, more soldiers were surviving underground in the Ypres area than the 35,000 people living in the city today. Zonnebeck, at the heart of the Ypres salient and so open to shelling from 3 sides, had the largest concentration of underground constructions in the entire area. More than 180 have been located, but only a few have been explored and protected by the foundations of the former church. Zonnebeck Church dugout is one of the best preserved examples in the region. The Duke and Duchess of Cambridge at an event to mark the centenary of the battle. Credit Getty. Its opening is part of a series of events commemorating the centenary of the Battle of Passchendaele. Also known as the Third Battle of Ypres, it became one of the defining conflicts of the First World War, lasting 100 days and claiming 500,000 casualties for the sake of a 5-mile advance. Thunderous rain turned the battlefield into a quagmire of mud that drowned tanks, horses and men as they tried to reclaim the high ground at Passchendaele and push the Germans back from the coast, in order to destroy their submarine bases that threatened Britain's supply lines and the American reinforcements arriving by ship. A total of 61 Victoria Crosses were awarded, the most of any single battle. So, apart from visiting the dugout, how do you best get a feel for the realities of passchendaele, and honor those who died? Central to any visit must be the cemeteries, and first among those is Tyne Cot, the world's largest Commonwealth war grave cemetery and the final resting place for 11,953 souls. Tyne Cot, the world's largest Commonwealth war grave cemetery, credit Getty, as well as the immaculate ranks of gravestones. Tyne Cot also enshrines the remains of the battlefield, and the visitors center here displays the hulls of shrapnel cleared from the ground when the cemetery was built. Originally a German stronghold, its bunkers served as advanced dressing stations, with those who died from their wounds being buried roundabout and marked with wooden crosses. Control of it passed back and forth until the Belgian army claimed it in September 1918. Almost as many soldiers lie buried in Lichsenhoek Military Cemetery near Poeparen, west of Ypres. It sat beyond the reach of German artillery fire and was used as a field hospital for the entirety of the war, with treatment rooms cobbled together inside abandoned farm buildings. Many of the casualties from passchendaele were brought here, and the green space is home to 10,784 graves. South of Zonnebeck is Polygon Wood, which was lost to the Germans in May 1915, completely razed during fighting, and not recaptured until September 1917. It is dedicated to the Australian and New Zealand divisions who died defending the position in 1917. A walled avenue leads across the road to Butte's new British cemetery. Purpose-built after the armistice, it's the burial ground for 2,108 soldiers brought in from the battlefields of Zonnebeck, mostly in 1917, more than half of which were never identified. Trenches at the Memorial Museum. Passchendaele 1917 credit Getty. Also worth visiting is the Passchendaele Memorial, which covers the land once occupied by Crest Farm, a site of particularly stubborn German resistance. The modest square monument is dedicated to the Canadian troops who fought there, and is, fittingly, lined with maple trees. Finally, to get an overview of the entire battle, the Memorial Museum. Passchendaele 1917 has a fascinating timeline of uniforms, documents, letters and photographs, and brings the war to life with interactive exhibits that allow you to smell the gases used, from chlorine to mustard, as well as meticulously replicated trenches in the chateau grounds. As for the front line, all that now marks it is a string of tree saplings encircled with fences, painted blue to highlight Allied positions, and red to denote German defense lines. Today, the woods have regrown, and birdsong echoes from the hedges once again, but the Zonnebeck church dugout is proof that the scars of war are forever embedded in this landscape, the sacrifice of the soldiers never forgotten. Getting there for rail travel to Ypres via Brussels, contact Eurostar.com. For our guide to cross-channel ferry fares, follow this link. Zonnebeck Church Dugout. Visitor numbers to the dugout are capped at 50,000, so reserving tickets in advance is essential through the Memorial Museum. Passchendaele 1917 website. Passchendaele.betickets or visit Flanders. Visit flanders.co.uk. Events will be taking place until November. Credit Getty. Battle of Passchendaele Centenary events until November 10th. Visitors can leave a personal message of peace at the Memorial Museum. Passchendaele 1917, a selection of which will be engraved onto identity tags to be used in a new permanent work of art at the Passchendaele Memorial Park in Zonnebeck. July 31st. The official commemoration begins on the eve of July 30th, with the traditional last post ceremony at the Menin Gate, followed by a special live performance in Ypres Market Square. On Monday, there will be service of commemoration at Tyne Cot Cemetery. October 14th, Silent City meets Living City. 12,000 volunteers will gather by the gravestones at Tyne Cot Cemetery and light a candle. Register at passchendaele2017.org. November 10th, Passchendaele ceremony. November 10th, 1917 marks the day that Canadian troops ended the Battle of Passchendaele. Commemorations begin with a ceremony at the Passchendaele Memorial at Crest Farm, followed by a torchlight parade along Canada Lawn. November 11th, commemoration of 99 years armistice. www.tourismypres.be. A service at Passchendaele Church, as well as 2 ceremonies at the Black Watch Monument and Tyne Cot Cemetery. The town of Passchendaele today. Credit Getty.